Christian says, when players receive media training, what does this involve? Um, Look, every board does it differently. I think what they try and do now, I'll talk about what they do now compared to when I started. When I started, it was very much give these sorts of responses, deflate the question in this way, ask a question in their response, sort of the way that you would train a politician. Um, was the sort of original way of doing it. It was very managed at that point. And I think now what they do is they're much smarter at understanding that actually a press conference is an advantage for an athlete and for the team itself. And so there's a lot of thing of, being yourself, but being aware of how things will be turned against you, how things might be seen, even if you don't mean it that way. So I know of one particular player who was told by the cricket board, if you're sarcastic, that's fine, but make sure you smirk at the end, right? Or make sure at the end you make it really clear it's a joke. Um, those sorts of things are very helpful. They usually have little courses. They interview people. Sometimes I don't know if they still do this, but they used to get journalists in sometimes and just be like, you've got a bunch of young players here, interview them, and go through these players so they know what to do. Explaining things like blogs and podcasts was a big part of what media training used to be. But I think there's a much more. When I started, it was very much that players were trained on how not to get in trouble, and I think now players are trained on how to let their personal style come through. But yeah, different boards do it in different ways. As I said, sometimes they do mock stuff. Sometimes you'll get journalists to come along, and it won't be mock. But it might be early on in a player's career, and you're trying to see how they interact. And a lot of it will be you might have said something to the press, and it may not have blown up massively. I can think of one situation where there was something that happened with a player where we didn't use what the player said in the press conference because we knew the way he meant to say it wasn't quite the way it came out. But if we'd put snippets of online, or anyone had used the quotes of it, this player would have got into a negative media space. It was probably at the birthplace of Twitter. So Twitter wasn't massive, but Twitter was around. The bloggers would have got involved with it. Some of the tabloidy papers might have got involved with it as well. Whereas in actual fact, in this case, it was just an easy thing of passing back to the player. The way he said the thing he was trying to say wasn't right. And there are lots of times when people say stuff to the media now, and the media people will go back and they'll just be like, "See how you said it like this? What you're saying is fine, but you need to understand that you're not just playing to that one journalist that you're playing to a room, and then that room is going out to the world," and those sorts of things. So it has changed a lot. I haven't been involved with training players in a very long time. I've written stuff for cricket boards on how they can better do things. I still think it's very defensive. I think a lot of the media stuff is very defensive, whereas I actually think the best media officers generally understand how the media works, and also the best way to sell each individual player, right? Which is kind of what it should be.